Hey, my name's Jerred Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are Garage Gym Athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. We have Ashley Hicks. What's up, Ashley?
What's up?
And then we have Kyle Joe. Kyle and Joe are here today.
Really got indecisive on that.
Yeah, I tried to say it at the exact same time. It didn't come out how I thought it was going to.
You could have gone with like
Kyle.
Kill Joe?
Joe.
All right, Kyle, what's up, man? Welcome.
Hey, I'm good.
Is this your first time on this end of the new format?
On this one. Actually, I haven't been on a podcast since I was on season 1 as an athlete. So I haven't been on one as a coach. So yeah.
Back in the day. All right.
Back in the.
Everybody knows Joe. What's up, Joe?
Hi.
Yeah. Doing his thing. So the whole team's here. We're going to try it out. I don't actually know how to manage this many people in a conversation, so who knows? Let's just give it a shot, and we'll go from there.
These are more adults than we see in a day.
You need to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay. Let's get into it. So we're going to... I have a few announcements first. I'm not going to do a fact of the week because we have too much going on to go fact of the week. So what we have going on, new cycle. This is being published next week. I mean, we're like a week away from when this is published. Goodness. Just, it comes so fast. The more cycles you're a part of, the faster they seem to go. So new cycle is coming for all of our athletes. If this is next week, then we should be doing... Oh, no. We'll be doing our webinar in 2 weeks. I think it was like something September 24th, somewhere around that time frame. It's a Tuesday before the next cycle kicks off. It's during Fit Week. We'll be doing a webinar. I'll be sending out emails, putting on Facebook and Instagram and everything. So sign up for that webinar if you're interested in learning more about the new cycles and, you know, what we're doing and how we're doing it, all of that stuff. Those are normally pretty cool. And also sign up if you can't attend because we send out the replay 90% of the time. And otherwise, I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but events, if you go to garagegymathlete.com/events, you can see what events we're doing. It looks like all of us are going to be hitting up an event in North Carolina, Spartan Race. Joe and I will be in Tahoe at the end of this month in September. And then I think there's one I'll be doing. I don't actually think I'm going to do the race because no one else is doing it. And I'm fine with just not doing it. But my kids are doing the Dallas Spartan. But if anyone wants to run a race, I'll do that. What else do we have? Patches. 2 things on patches. So we did a EO3 patch order for all of our athletes around the start of the last cycle. We'll be doing that again, but also we'll be sending out our 86% Killing Comfort patches. If you have no idea what that is, you're not very involved in the community, and you need to be. But for all the athletes who are wondering about that, I'm not going to explain in great detail. You basically had to maintain consistency over this past cycle to get the patch. It's earned, can't purchase it. And we'll be sending those out, and I'll be sending out the process on how to, apply for the patch. And then also at the new cycle, Fuels course number 3 will be kicking off. Those have been really a lot of fun, and really just good information. I enjoy going over it with all the athletes, and anyone who's purchased the course previously, you can come to any of our events that we're doing. We do a lot of live trainings and everything, so you can be a part of that. And dang, last thing, podcast interviews. So we are interviewing, reaching out to people right now for season 9? Season 9. So we have a season 1 attendee right here as an athlete who's now coach, all the way now to season 9. We're going to like slow down. We can't be like season 476.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so season 9 is coming up where we interview athletes, maybe a little bit fewer athletes than normal, just because we're already working so hard on episodes like this, talking about combining coaches' names and all sorts of fun stuff over here. So if you want to be on the podcast, you want to do a repeat interview, whatever it is, then hit us up. You can email us, find us on Instagram, whatever, and we will get you on the podcast. So a lot of announcements. Now I can stop talking. Joe, what's new in your world?
Well, just got back from a vacation, and fitness and vacation, those things are foreign concepts to me sometimes. But we walked a ton, and luckily my Garmin every day increased our pace, gives you like steps and stairs goals, and every day it just says, go a little bit further. Just go a little bit further. So we walked an average of like 10 miles a day, just doing whatever the heck we were doing. So it was still something, but we did get one workout in. And one thing I wanted to say about the workout, because we're on the cruise ship, is that we use this equipment, the brand called Techno Gym. And that stuff is really nice. And like they had it's probably the only rower that I've used that felt just as good as a Concept 2. And they have treadmills that are like almost like Trueform. They have like actual treads and stuff on them. Well, I went to look up their price today, and there's probably a reason why I haven't heard of them, because they are ridiculously expensive.
Yeah,
They're really nice.
I think I've seen Techno whatever like in like hotel gyms and like nice Globo gyms and stuff, but not something you want to outfit the garage gym with.
No, but it was awesome to use just to try out once in a while. You know, it was cool to have that kind of gym setup for a little bit, but you know, the people were always still the big issue.
What cruise line were you on?
Machines.
Norwegian.
Machines are the enemy.
They just outfitted a bunch of their gyms with Techno Gym stuff. And then just on the cruise and stuff, realizing how much foreign food affects me and us and the body, and like because of how clean we eat, and then we eat stuff that's, you know, probably not cooked in very good oil, probably has a lot of fake crap to season and deal with it. And at first couple of days you don't really notice, but then halfway through, like stomach issues, my body just didn't have any appetite to eat any of the food, and I even got sick. I'm not saying that I got like sick because of it, but you know, my defenses could have been up because of crappy food, dealing with that. But yeah, so it's not ideal, but it was still a good time. Still did enough to keep the blood flowing.
Sounds awful. The whole
vacation wise, it was actually good. There were some epic hikes that we did.
I'm just messing around. I've seen your pictures. It looked amazing, but you only shared us the negative parts. You're like, I got sick. The gym.
See, Instagram shared the positive parts. I'm sharing the negative parts. So maybe we can collab. You know, I can mix them. I just don't want to take up the whole podcast.
Well, the pictures did look amazing. I don't even know where I saw them. Maybe your Facebook or Instagram somewhere.
Instagram, because you don't Facebook on regular feeds.
I don't Facebook. I don't use that as a thing, other than in the group. You see me communicating in the group. That's all I do with Facebook. Okay, Ashley, life updates, training updates. How's everything?
Going good. Training was back up to 5 days a week, and then I got hit with a cold, so I took yesterday off. But today's workout was pretty cool because I was still able to move some weight, because it wasn't super high intense workout. It was just, quality for 20 minutes. Yeah, it was nice. But yeah, so just nursing this cold, which is funny because someone posted on our group today asking if they should work out while they're sick.
Yeah, what's your take on that? Everyone feel free to chime in, but I have my own specific view.
So, like yesterday, I felt like I got hit by a truck. So there was no way I was going. And I could feel my body needed to rest. So Connor takes a nap in the morning. Connor's my little one. And then he also takes a nap in the afternoon. So I napped both in the morning and the afternoon. And that's when I know that I'm like sick. Today I woke up and I felt fantastical. But sometimes in the morning you kind of get that fake high, and then towards the afternoon you come down. But thankfully I didn't feel that. I'm just congested. So I didn't go full out. So I guess I don't know. So I guess my opinion would be you kind of have to know your body and don't push it when you are definitely super sick, where you're like, I need to get some rest.
Yeah, I think it's just like you're doing recovery from a lot of other stuff. Just get up, start moving around. I probably tend to skip some workouts especially if they're more intense. But might take dog for a walk or do something low intensity just to do a little something. And then if it gets worse the next day, maybe I'll take a rest day and dial in the nutrition.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I basically will
Ignore everything.
I'll base it off of body temperature. So if I'm having any sort of fever, like I'm not going to train. That means your body is already working insanely hard to do whatever it's doing, whatever it's fighting. So typically fever is the only thing that'll keep me out of the gym. If I just have a cold or something, I'm not going to stick to the normal programming necessarily, like you're saying, Joe,
Right.
but I would definitely still go like, row or ride the bike or whatever for 30 minutes, something. I would definitely be moving. And how I can typically figure out if I'm getting sick, I actually know I'm getting sick like the day before I get sick because I'll work out and like start getting overheated in the workout, which is not like a common thing. I'll be like, oh crap, like getting sick. I could just tell like it's coming. And then sometimes, my body ends up fighting it off, but not too much. Kyle, what do you do when you're sick?
Actually, it's kind of weird. I've had kind of the same thing. It feels like a cold. I don't know what it is. I don't know where I would have gotten it because it's like 300 degrees down here right now. But like not last night, but the night before, like I was just so congested, like I couldn't even sleep. Like I was up at like 1 a.m. and didn't go back to sleep. So like my whole day yesterday was just wrecked because I didn't sleep at all the night before. So I didn't work out yesterday either, but I felt a lot better today, so got back after it today. Kind of same as Ashley, but yeah, I'm not as intense as you though. Like if I feel sick, I'm just like, okay, we're just gonna chill today and get back after it tomorrow. And anyway, yeah, kind of the same thing. But it's also like if I can't breathe, I feel like I can't work out. So it's like if I'm focusing really hard on actually being able to breathe, then like I'm not thinking about working out. So trying to figure out how to actually be able to breathe again and get that congestion out was my primary goal yesterday. So
It seems it's also key to drink whatever you're trying to drink to recover out of a wine glass. I think it works better. Is that right, Ashley?
Yep. Cheers, mate.
All right. So I don't have a lot of updates. I think I did want to update on that. So that bike race, going back to it, I think that it took me a significant amount of time to recover. And this is all kind of like post training thoughts. I've had time to like really digest it. And I don't think that we've discussed it in any depth, but the physically fine. Like that's why, when we talked about the recap, but we talked about that brain fog and everything. I feel like all of that lasted for like a solid week, and bouncing back after it, I don't know what it is. Something about that race. I mean, that was a hard pace for me. I'm not some elite cyclist, and I actually pushed myself pretty hard. It wasn't one of those. I typically go to those events and I'm like, let's survive, and I tried to go push myself on it, and I just think I had like really suppressed like central nervous system, and it just took a long time to bounce back from that. So it's just interesting to see this, but I didn't have any metrics that could agree. Like there was nothing like elevated resting heart rate didn't happen, depressed HRV didn't happen. Like there was nothing else saying that other than just the way that I felt, which I thought was interesting.
It was that tire, that darn tire.
Don't even get me started on the tire. Okay, and the only other thing I have, Apple just came out with their new watch, like as of yesterday of recording this, and there's nothing special about it at all. It can, the display stays on 100% of the time. It can track female menstrual cycles, and it can hear. It can hear. So it'll tell you if it's too loud around you. So nothing I was hoping for. And I was really hoping for like some sort of fitness. A lot of people were talking about sleep tracking coming. I was reading an article too. They're like, everyone said sleep tracking was coming. Like, we're really surprised it didn't happen. So I don't know if that's down the road or next year, but nothing special from Apple. So, I mean, just like nothing. Like not even, just nothing. Just nothing. So go.
I wonder why they want the face to be on all the time. And the battery life was already meh.
Well, I think that they've done that to where the battery life is the same, but the screen is on all the time. I know from a fitness standpoint, I wish that when it was in fitness mode or whatever, when it's tracking whatever you're doing, I wish the screen would stay on the entire time. Because you're off, like you're holding a dumbbell or like a barbell or whatever, and you're trying to glance at your watch. You can't do it because you have to like tilt to see it, right? And so I've actually been in that situation multiple times where I'm like, I want to see how long I'm holding this plank or something, and you can't just like glance at it. So that's a decent feature, but not worth purchasing feature. Well, it was like, would you pay $600 or whatever an Apple Watch costs, $500, $300 to have the screen not turn off? No. And I'm not interested in tracking my cycles. So, all right, well, let's get into the study. So the study is the effects of alcohol consumption on recovery following resistance exercise, a systematic review. And I'm pretty excited about this one for a number of reasons. But let me, I think I should just start with the conclusion, and then we can...
All right.
Yeah.
Switch it up.
Because we were kind of discussing this in Slack before we got started, like why I selected this one, because we all know that there's like no real positive to alcohol, right? Like that doesn't need to be argued, but the truth of the matter is a large part of the population drinks alcohol. And I bet a lot of people listening to this right now drinks alcohol in some capacity. I'm not saying you have a problem or you're an alcoholic, but you probably consume alcohol, and you might be wondering what's the effect of when I drink a couple beers on training the next day or whatever the case may be. And I want to start with a conclusion and then talk about, we can kind of break it down from there. So the overall conclusion from this study, and it was a systematic review. Again, explanation of systematic review is where they didn't do a specific study. They just took a look at a bunch of other studies and made some conclusions. And the systematic reviews are pretty cool because it's just this huge consolidation of a lot of knowledge. And so I do like systematic reviews, but their findings are a little bit weird. So their conclusion directly from the study says, alcohol consumption following resistance exercise doesn't seem to be a modulating factor for creatine kinase, heart rate, lactate, blood glucose, estradiol, sexual hormone binding globulin, leukocytes, cytokines, C-reactive protein, and calcium. So didn't seem to affect any of those things, is what they're saying. It also said force, power, muscular endurance, soreness, and rate of perceived exertion are also unmodified following alcohol consumption during recovery. So they're saying, hey, you don't get less powerful, you don't get less forceful, your muscle endurance is the same, soreness is fine, and overall perceived exertion is also fine. Alcohol doesn't really affect your recovery or your performance. So all directions pointing positive towards drinking a lot of alcohol and exercising so far. And then the last sentence, cortisol levels seem to be increased while testosterone, plasma amino acids, and rates of muscle protein synthesis decreased. Okay. And that's all I got. And science doesn't draw conclusions for you like, okay, what does that mean? That's a lot of like different crap. So I want to break that down. That's why I want to talk about this study, because if you were to just take the headline of this study, or say CNN got it, or somebody writing an article, they could very easily, from this systematic review, be like, alcohol is not bad for you. And they would have a leg to stand on because of this systematic review. And that's upsetting to me. Not because I'm anti-alcohol. I just don't think it's going to help you. The only benefit I think ethanol has in any capacity is if you're like a really anxious or stressed out person, and an occasional glass of wine helps you not be that way, or helps you, and I'm not talking about like every single day, but like maybe you do that once a week, once a month, whatever. I think the psychological benefits there may outweigh any detriment to your physiological suppressors. That the last sentence of that study. So that's the only benefit I could give you. But let's get into some of that. But let me throw it to you guys. So what are your thoughts on? I don't know. I would say overall, and we can go around the table. Start with you, Joe. Just overall thoughts on the study. Was there anything interesting that stood out to you? Anything else?
I mean, it was all very ambiguous somewhat, going over a lot of it, but they still said a couple of times that it still affects your hormones. And although doing it once and on occasion, the term they use, which I hate being used in anything which would cause diet and nutrition, is as in moderation, because moderation is so vague that to some people moderation is 3 times a week. Other people moderation is more or less than that. So
3
it
drinks
varies.
a
And
day.
then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and moderation can start of, oh, okay, I only do this on Friday. And then after 3 Fridays, you're like, oh, well, it doesn't affect me that much. So maybe I can do it twice a week. Oh, it doesn't affect me that much. So moderation can, over time could just slippery slope, I think. But it's still going to be bad for your hormones. And that it will just slow the production of those and whatnot. As far as, I mean, I could just go even further about what I was thinking is that, so that they acknowledge a few times that it is bad for your sleep and it affects your sleep because you don't actually sleep. And how I kind of think of it is, so as being somebody that has drank a good bit and worn all of these trackers that I have, is because I can go back and see my heart rate through the night after I fall asleep, and then it reaches a point where it actually finally goes down to where I'm actually sleeping. And that's because my body's finally done, I guess, processing the alcohol and is ready to sleep. And that can be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours or something of my body trying to work to get to that point. So your body isn't actually sleeping. So it's more like you're just going for a very slow walk instead of sleeping. And if you think of it that way, for how long it takes, you really only got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep when you were actually asleep or in bed for 8 to 10 or whatever it is. So you just got to kind of think of it in a different light. And then the last one, they mentioned melatonin real quick. Actually, every time I do drink, I take melatonin. I keep melatonin by the bed because it helps sleeping when drinking.
Nice. And that was a big factor for me. So there are other studies that talk about how it affects sleep. So it does help you go to sleep faster. The studies point that out here. So your onset of sleep is much quicker, but your quality, you get more slow wave, but much less REM, and you're just not sleeping as well. And like you said, Joe, so if you wear a Whoop or a Ring, anything that's really good at tracking your sleep, you're going to notice this increased resting heart rate and a decrease in HRV. So it's just not good for you. The data is very clear. And I've talked about how that was like a big indicator for me from being like I won't even say moderate, like a limited alcohol drinker to like basically don't drink alcohol, was just seeing those metrics over and over because there was no amount that like seemed to make that matter. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have 1 beer. And it's like, nope, still no good. So my body just wasn't handling it well. But if I had to reprioritize like all the puzzle pieces here of being a healthy human being, I would probably put sleep first after all I've read and like researched and everything, like from your tolerance of pain being less when you don't sleep, the fact that there are natural killer cells that can just straight up kill cancer if it finds it. Those killer cells are decreased by like 60% when you get less than like 6 hours of sleep. You know, these things that are just so good for our body, the recovery, the hormone production, all the good things that come from sleep. If you're like, hey, either like you can only eat healthy, you can only work out, or you can only sleep perfectly, which one's going to be? While out of personal interest, I would want to probably pick fitness. I would know that sleep is probably the most important of those factors if we had to like make a pyramid or whatever. So the single fact that it says, yeah, sleeping was depressed, but they don't there's not a sleep study, so they're not going to go into like why that matters or anything like that. And so that's why we can dig into a little bit deeper here and talk about these things. But sleep, the fact that alcohol affects your sleep, may be the only thing that you need to know. Like, it's going to screw up your sleep. If you don't want to screw up your sleep, then start drinking in the morning. Who does that? Like, you just start drinking at like 8 a.m.?
Well,
oh, you were just on vacation. Forget about, don't answer that.
well, we are, if we do drink, we are day drinkers and we end by 6 p.m.
Okay. Well, then,
but, yeah, what you say.
Here's a story for day drinking real quick, because I think I have a record. I don't drink that much, but I'm still going to tell a drinking story. So
the one you got in your back pocket.
There's a little thing called initial flight screening. I think it's called initial flight training now. Ashley's familiar. Her husband went through it. We went through it at the same time, actually together. And they call it, I don't want to get all that. Anyway, they put you through like 3 weeks. It's anywhere 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how good you are at flying, where like they basically see if you can fly an airplane with minimal instruction, to be honest. Looking back at it, they're like, they just like kind of get you in a plane. They're like, you're doing okay, and then they see how you do. But at the end of your check ride, like it was like mandatory beer to have a check ride. And I had a check ride. I mean, I don't remember. It was like the earliest possible time you could schedule a check ride, and then like they bumped it up. So I was like taking off at like 5 a.m. or something like that. And I was done with the check ride at like 6 or, 6:30, something like that. And had a beer right after that and did not want to, but it was the culture and I did it. And I am proud of it though. So that was a huge tangent, but I just wanted to share that story since we're talking about day drinking. So thoughts from Ashley. What are your overall thoughts on just some of the things you saw in the study that you found interesting or wanted to point out?
Or day drinking.
So,
or day drinking,
no.
if you have a good one.
No. So I don't want to, just for time's sake, reiterate basically what Joe said and what you said. I totally agree with. The thing I think that shocked me was the findings that on the recovery, like it didn't have any super negative impacts on the recovery of the athletes that they tested this on. And for some reason, I thought there would have more of an impact right after the recovery. Now, if they said for longer periods or longer duration that they needed to see, right? Isn't that what they said in the conclusion? That
well, and I get what you're saying, because I 100% agree and think that it's kind of dumb. Like so starting this business, Into 3 Fitness, if I were to work on it, say today was day 1 of starting the business and I worked on it today and I was like, tomorrow I'm like, we haven't made any money. This is obviously businesses don't work. That's the conclusion. That's all they did. They looked at 36 hours and 60 hours,
right?
But it takes daily time on task for these things to play out. Same in business, same with life. If I go eat an entire pizza right now and I'm like, hey, look, you can still see my abs and I'm still like pretty fit, like good to go. Pizza is not bad. Wait, like that's kind of what they did in this study, which was very frustrating.
Exactly.
If I go eat an entire box of pizza and then you test my back squat, it's going to be fine because I've had all this fitness before. It's really, okay, what happens with alcohol consumption on recovery or power output or all these other things over, let's just say 2 weeks or 2 months or 6 months or whatever. Like that's what I'm much more interested in. So you're right. In these like immediate pre-post 36-hour, 60-hour window, they found, okay, you're about the same level of strength and you're still the same level of power. And we don't notice anything in your blood work that would say you have a blunted recovery state right now. But, and that leads them to the conclusion that alcohol might be fine. It blows my mind. I don't know. I'm kind of mad at the study. It's kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Kyle, any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns on the study?
I don't really have any personal experience with it, so it's not something that I can comment on from there. But I agree with you guys that it was just kind of like one thing that stuck out to me. It said the retrieved measures of performance returned to baseline within 2 days following both alcohol consumption and the exercise bouts. So it kind of seems like you could have alcohol today and then 2 days later you're going to bounce right back. But that was only in one study and only for certain people. You know what I mean? Like there was only one study that measured like 36 hours out, there was a dip in the performance, right? And it was only one study. But it also says like the sample size of each study was between 8 and 19 participants, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's not very many people and they're not measuring it out over time, so like, what about people who, do have a little bit every day, like for moderation to them is a little bit every day. So it's like, how does it affect them from day to day to day, because assuming from this, if it takes 2 days to bounce back fully, and of course only one study found that, but if it takes 2 days to bounce back fully, people who consume every day never bounce back fully. You know what I mean? But we don't get that from anyway.
It's like driving a car, which newer cars don't really have this, but most cars I've owned have it. Like just a regular emergency brake, and you can pull the emergency brake all the way up or a little bit up. I know a lot of them are just like buttons now, but it's like driving with that thing like pulled up like a quarter of the way, right? It's like it's just slightly pinching your brake discs, right? Just like slowing you down enough, but your car can still go. Everything's fine. You're getting to work. Maybe a funny smell because your emergency brake is on, but otherwise it's perfectly fine. But you're 100% right. Like if it takes 2 days to get back to your baseline, but you never actually allow that much time for recovery, you're probably a suboptimal human being and you don't know it. And hey, You can fix it pretty easily. I think there's a Dr. Kirk Parsley. I've mentioned this study. I haven't found the study. I need to find it, but it was Dr. Kirk Parsley is the one who mentioned the study, so I know it's a real thing. I just gotta find it anyway. It was like a sleep study where they tested hand-eye coordination. Like they did all these tests to see how sleep would affect that. But the most interesting part of the study is they would take a objective test where it's like all those things I just mentioned, reaction times, hand-eye coordination, but then they would take a subjective like questionnaire, and they'd be like, because they're taking the same thing every day after not sleeping well, and they kept sleep depriving these people, and then the subjective questionnaire would be like, how do you feel that you did compared to yesterday? And at first they were like, oh, maybe not as good, but the more sleep deprived they got, the less sleep they got over a time period. Their subjective scores, because they're like, say 2 weeks into this, they're saying, nailed it. That was the best I've ever done. Like, I am totally owning this test. And those scores at that point were so far beyond their baseline, like so far below their baseline, like it wasn't even funny. So it's like this, you don't even know. Like you could be so far off your game and you don't even know it because you think you're operating at, you're like, I'm doing awesome. And it's, well, you're not. You're not actually doing awesome. You're doing pretty poor. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, since this study was like really like, hey, drinking's not that bad, but maybe it is. Alcohol skeletal myopathy is a term describing the loss of muscle mass, which can be as high as a loss of 20% of total body mass related to chronic excessive alcohol consumption. And there's a study for that. So if you do drink a lot of alcohol, it's going to affect your overall muscle mass. I've never seen someone who drinks a lot of alcohol who looks like jacked in any way, shape, or form. I've never seen it. Other than someone who, and to be honest, if they're like on steroids or something like that, what they're doing to their liver is going to shorten their lifespan by about 40 years. And so like, hey, yeah, let's do steroids and drink alcohol. Screw my liver. That's really bad. But I've never seen it before. Never been, some people you'd be like, wow, they drink a lot, but they're still a good husband. They're still a good pilot. They're still a good whatever. Like you see that stuff happen, but I've never seen someone who's like, that person drinks a lot and they're jacked. You won't see it because it's just not possible. All right. I think that covers it. Anything, because we started with a conclusion. So basically, if you're just looking at the immediate, there's no real problem with drinking alcohol. It's not going to affect your performance. One really funny thing about if you dig into the studies, they actually got people drunk and had them work out. Like, that was pretty hilarious to read. They're like, just get people wasted. And then they did like these isokinetic and isometric leg tests. And I'm like, interesting. But yeah, so not bad the day before, the day after, during, but probably bad long term. Cool. All right. All right, let's my takeaway was, I wrote down, don't be tricked by headlines. You have to look at every facet, not just a mechanistic outcome, because I do think that you could get a study like this. I could even do it. Like I could write an article that would have you fully convinced alcohol is okay from the science that I just pulled. Like I could selectively pull science out of that article and be like, alcohol is fine. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's what scares me about.
Pretty much every article out there, clickbait article does.
Yeah. Like I could totally write an awesome clickbait article right now on how alcohol doesn't affect strength athletes. And it would be,
well, it goes the other way too, because at the end in the conclusions it says levels of cortisol were increased. So if you wanted to say, cortisol is really bad, you could look at this, say levels of cortisol were increased from alcohol. And then it says, and levels of testosterone and rates of muscle protein synthesis were decreased. So like drinking alcohol decreases your testosterone. Like somebody could write that article, and it's just like, you really have to dig into this stuff and actually see what it actually says instead of just taking it at face value.
Or just listen to us break it down on a weekly basis.
That's why we go over studies.
But that's a great point, because when Joe and I had a conversation about nutrition, like things that we wish we would have known, and I said, hey, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but if I could go back, I would have told myself, have an amazing understanding of insulin and also have an amazing understanding of cortisol. So the fact that it increases your cortisol, and that's one of the hormones I said that you should be looking out for or have a good understanding of, not how you don't want to increase cortisol. Just like that's 101 stuff right there. And if alcohol is doing it, that's probably a bad thing. You don't want to decrease testosterone. That's very rare that you'd want to do that. So yeah, not a good place to be. All right, you guys ready to switch gears now?
Yeah, always.
All right. So the topic this week, we had some people in the Facebook group asking about goal setting, like how we set goals, how we stay motivated. And I think, this kind of lends itself to the mental side of Garage Gym Athlete and a lot of the stuff that we do. I kind of just wanted to hear it from each one of you. And I can talk about my goal setting process and not in any real depth. I can point people to some resources and talk about it, but I just would love to hear, because I don't know if I even fully know why any of you keep going. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but like, I don't think I've ever dove deep enough with any of you to fully understand, like, most people don't train every day. That is normal. And when I say normal, I'm talking like highly normal to like not do any form of physical activity. And you all do on a very consistent basis and have for a long time. So I would love, and sometimes it's hard if you haven't like reflected, and I'm kind of springing this on you, but if you haven't like really thought about like, hey, why, I don't know, why do I do this? And I think that we have a very interesting group here, because I think Kyle has been really consistent more recently, like the last few years. Ashley, she's been active for a long time, but got more into functional training within the last, I guess it's been like 10 years. How long has it been? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Joe, I mean, you've been fairly active going back into sports in high school. And I don't know, you probably found functional fitness around the same time Ashley did. And I may have the longest training history. I'm not sure, just starting at such an early age, but talking about 15, 16 years of training. And so to answer these questions of like, because we all come from a little bit different backgrounds and reasoning behind it, I'd love to hear more about it. So I will start with Ashley. What keeps you going? Like how do you stay motivated to continue to be like, you know what? Here's another week of programming. I want to smash it.
Yeah. Well, coming from a soccer background, playing that sport at a very young age, and then continuing on in high school, and then I did intramurals in college, and actually did intramural team when my husband was in pilot training, and I still dabble every once in a while. Footy here, as they call it, or football, is it's a little more intense. So I definitely don't play on a team here, but I've always been competitive. And then what you said, I had a friend that was like, hey, you should try this whole CrossFit realm out. And I kind of dabbled in that for a little bit. But I think what gets me going every day is just the competitive side of me. It's not necessarily being competitive with other people, even though that's fun too. I always like to, dabble in that. I think it's fun to like motivate that way. And I'm very motivated with competition. But it's more of being competitive with myself. So I know things are going to look differently, especially now with my postpartum. And that's most of my motivation. I want to keep up with my son when he gets older. But also it's really awesome for me because my husband, Scott, he is also dabbling in this fitness realm, and he also stays very fit. And so we both kind of motivate each other. And even when we don't feel like it, it's nice to just kind of lean on someone to do that. But yeah, as for goal setting though, like it just depends. If we're just strictly talking fitness goals, I like to look at every 12-week cycle. Like, okay, not necessarily always PRing, but let's focus on something this cycle. Like let's focus on mile time, or let's focus on, a certain movement. But that's pretty much it for me. I don't want to ramble too long. So
no, that makes sense. I think having that support network is huge, because if you feel like you start to slack and the other party, is like, well, I'm going to go work out. And you're like, damn it. I get into it. Day. Yeah. So that's a huge factor and interesting. So let's go with Kyle next, man. I think I'd love to hear your response as. Hey.
Well, my reason for doing all of this is the same as it was back in season 1. The whole reason that I joined up with the Garage Gym Athlete and started, actually started focusing on my health was, because I became a dad and realized, hey, there actually are people who need me to be better than I am right now. And it's so, and what I found is like, I'm still not very good at like goal setting outside of this one thing. But this one thing ties into like the thing for me. Like this is my big why, is like sticking around for my kids and my wife and providing, and it kind of sounds cliche maybe, but it's just like, I want to set an example for them and I want to be there for them. And so all of this ties back into that. And so I feel like with goal setting, if you don't have a really good handle on why you're setting that goal in the first place and what that goal is going to accomplish because of that, then, it's going to be really tough for you to actually push yourself to meet that goal. And I think that's why, and actually just recently, when we bought our house, the previous owners had finished the basement and like put carpet and all that stuff down in it and all that. And so up until about 3 weeks ago, like it was still finished and we had some furniture down there and a TV, but then in the other half, like we had our gym stuff. And like 3 weeks ago, I just took a Saturday and just ripped all of that stuff out. And it's like all a gym now. That's all it is. And it's because like number one, we weren't using that other space down there for anything. I mean, we had some couches and a TV and stuff, but we never watched TV down there. So it was just wasted space anyway. And we have a TV upstairs, so we don't need another TV. But it's like having more space dedicated to like actually using it for what we need to use it for, was a big deal. And so that's what pushes me, is that I know that if I skip out today, then it's like, that could be something that comes back to bite me later. And it's all tied back into the reason why I do it in the first place. And that's really what I need. And I think that's maybe the problem that I have with other goals that I set, is I don't have it attached to something big enough to make sure that I stick with it. You know what I mean? And maybe that's something for other people too, is like, if you set this goal and it's not attached to something big, and something really important, then I think that's where you get in trouble with not meeting those goals, is that the why wasn't big enough in the first place. Anyway, I think that's my take on it.
I think that's awesome, man. And something I've done working with people one-on-one a lot is going 5 levels deep on why. So you do like, why do you want, because people always start with something superficial, right? They're like, I want a back squat, or I want to lose 20 pounds. And you ask why, and then you ask why to that, why to that, all at least 5 levels deep, and you'll get somewhere. And somewhere is typically like some emotional level, or getting more on the intrinsic level of why you set that goal. So that's a little tactic or strategy people listening could try and utilize. Like sit down for 10 minutes and ask yourself why 5 levels deep, and see where you end up. I think that's really powerful. Or you might just know. A lot of people might just know. And, but so now moving to Joe, I think this would be interesting, because you both mentioned, Ashley and Kyle, kids, staying around, being active, healthy. Joe's not in that boat, but he's still busting his ass, working hard, training every day. So I'd love to hear, your why, man, and how you set goals.
Saving the least inspiring for last. Like, I don't even have a good story. It's just, I just kind of fell into it. Military culture, you just kind of, people work out because when you deploy and everything else, it's all there is to do. And it's like, all right, I guess I'll do this.
I can't not do it.
Yeah. And then I got out of that, and I eventually found CrossFit because it was something to do. And it was just like, okay, this is fun. And it was like, it was getting better and stronger and stuff like that. But I mean, now why I train, I mean, how else can I say that I'm hard to kill for life if I don't just keep doing it? Like, I got to keep 3 years straight going or something, whatever it is.
Dang. You need the tattoo.
Let's pump the brakes.
So,
I'll get off the track.
I will say, it's been my dream as a business owner for someone to get EO3 tattooed on their body. That wasn't me.
Oh, no.
Hey, I'm not saying any of you need to do it. If anyone listening wants to do it, I'll reimburse you for the tattoo. I'll send you the files you need. No, just totally messing around. Don't go get EO3 that. Well, maybe on your butt, but
don't send us a picture.
Anyway,
Oh, where it is.
so this is interesting, Joe. You've just kind of it just became habitual. So you're like, yeah.
Right now, it's just a part of life, and like for a while, I did have some goals. As of right now, I don't have any like hard set goals. Like I'm really bad about setting goals. I'd still like to get my body weight strict press, but I just know that with hard to kill and stuff, I just want to get better at everything. So it's like as long as I'm working on everything, then that's fine. And although that like my right now my numbers aren't impressive, but if I just like maintain this for 10 years, when I'm in my 40s, if I'm like still in the shape of like
you
late
just
20
stay
year old,
where you're at, everyone else will fall down.
then that's I'll hit my peak. You know, so I'll just maintain for like 10 years, and then I'm good.
That is a great.
You'll just keep pacing even while you're older. You'll be the pace master.
I also have to keep my excellent streak alive for my Air Force PT test, but that's not hard to do.
No.
Well,
I had a hernia surgery and didn't work out for 2 months, and took my test and was just fine. So
yeah, it's not the end of the world. For passing. So interesting. Everyone has a little bit of different why and goal setting idea. I'll kind of go over my why, because to be honest, it doesn't. I can say that it's because of my kids, or but I'm so far beyond the fitness level you would need to keep up with your kids that like. I'm pushing injury almost every time I like. If I go really hard, I'm we talk about this continuum of like not healthy. Then there's the middle portion that's like fit, right, and healthy. And then if you get too fit, like CrossFit Games athlete or elite athlete, you're going back to unhealthy. That's why elite level powerlifters, any elite athlete has a very short shelf life, because they're just going to get injured. And I'm not saying I'm not competitive athlete style. I think I'm at the upper echelon of like, if I push any harder, I would just be getting hurt and like reducing my lifespan. So I really don't feel like, while when I think consciously, like I think my family is a big motivator, I just don't think deep down that is the reason behind why I do what I do. And I'm kind of like Joe, it's hard for me to answer that question. I don't really know. I got introduced to it at such an early age. I think I'm very interested in being healthy, which is something that I've learned over time, because every time something was introduced to me, let's say a shortcut, whether that's steroids, I've been directly offered performance enhancing drugs and like all these things and different supplements, all these things I could have done very easily with different groups I've been a part of, but I always said no. And the decision was kind of always health related. I was like, I'm doing this to like be healthier. Like I'm not doing this to like, get a PR tomorrow. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I've always had this really long-term view, like so much so, like I remember telling Emily after we got married, like kind of my fitness plan, like, yeah, I'll be after strength for this amount of time. And then these decades of my life, I'll probably go more endurance style training. And I'm like following that plan. My endurance cycle got pushed up about 5 years beyond what I thought it was going to, with more cycling recently. But I've just had such a intrinsic motivator to get better, which is going back to kind of Ashley's point. And this kind of goes into goal setting. I don't know. If I were to look at life, I have my family, I have my business, like friends, but like, what else are you going to do? Like what, I mean, do you want to get good at beer pong? Do you want to memorize Game of Thrones? Like, what are you trying to get good at? And at some point I just realized I'm okay with completely dedicating my life to health and fitness in every capacity. And so that's what keeps me so motivated now. But when I'm setting goals, it's always tiny now. I go micro now on goals, like super micro for like a 12-week time period. Like I'm going to endure next 12-week cycle, and there's a test in the cycling world called FTP, functional threshold power. And I think that mine kind of sucks. I don't think it's very good. So I would like to see if I could get that higher. That's it. That's the end of the 12-week cycle goal. Like, of course, I'll go through Fit Week and all these other things, but like I have these very small goals that just, I want to see if I can nudge up, see what my true capacity is, and learn more about myself in the process. And so goals for me, micro, my big why, I'm not super clear on it. I feel like it's just like got beat into me somewhere. I don't know. But I think it's very health related if I had to try and answer the question.
So you did harder to kill while you did your 100-mile bike race. And now you're not doing a 100-mile bike race. And you're going to endurance.
It just worked out that way because I kept flip-flopping. And I probably could do even better on the race if I would have been more dedicated. So what I was doing was anytime there was conditioning, like intervals in Hard to Kill, I would do biking and just do them longer for the most part. And then on Sundays and Thursdays, which are typical rest days, I would do like a long ride. And that's plenty of riding for me. To be like, I don't want to look like a cyclist. I don't want to be a cyclist. Like, but I do enjoy it. But I'm not built to like one of my buddies, really good friend, is a physical therapist, and he just like started laughing his ass off. He's like, "You are not a cyclist. You're not built for it at all." And I'm like, "I know, like, but it's something that's fun and challenging right now. So I'm going to keep trying to get better at it." I don't feel like I gave any helpful information over that 5 minutes or whatever I just spoke, but hopefully there was a nugget in there somewhere for somebody. Okay, the workout is next. Stairway to Heaven. Who's done it? Show of hands. Me and Ashley. So Joe and Kyle. You guys gotta get with it. All right.
I did like a version of it when I was when I had my rib injury because I couldn't do anything intense. So I just did box step ups wearing a vest for a while, but it wasn't that many.
So Kyle, you want to brief it?
Sure. So this one is just for an introduction. This one is gonna be brutal. I haven't done it, but just looking at it, it looks brutal. So you start off with a 20 minutes, every minute on the minute. And for competitors, you're gonna do this with
so
a
20 box step
on.
ups every minute, right? Yeah.
20 box step ups every minute on the minute for 20 minutes with a 40-pound vest. Established and recruit, you're going to start. Established is going to be 18 reps, and 30-pound vest. Recruit is going to be 16 reps and a 20-pound vest. So you do that for 20 minutes, and then you rest for 3 minutes. If during that time you can't keep the pace, then you knock the reps down 2 reps and you start over. Then you, like I said, rest for 3 minutes. Do another 20-minute EMOM after that. Competitors staying at 20 box step ups every minute, but you're going to reduce the vest to 20 pounds. And so you're going to do that again, but you keep the same pace. Whatever pace you had for the first round, you're going to keep the same pace. So if you're doing 20 box step ups for the first one, then do 20 for the second one. 18, you're doing 18 for the second one. After that, you're going to rest another 3 minutes. And then the last part, you're going to do no vest. And you're going to do 400 box step ups for time. And that's a 20-minute time cap. And that's for competitor. Established, you're doing 300. Recruit, you're doing 200. So if you do the competitor level, then you are doing 1,200 box step ups.
In an hour. Not too bad.
In an hour. Well, if you time cap it, then it's 66 minutes with the rest built in. But yeah, ideally you do it in an hour. 1,200 box step ups in an hour sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I have completed it. I did like actually complete it. I didn't have to start over, kept the weights the same. But that beginning part, if we're going to like tips and strategies, is where I would like to dive in. So you start with a 40-pound vest. And you've got to keep this pace. And if you can't keep the pace, you don't reduce the load, you reduce the reps but if you actually started at 20 and you had to go down by 2s and you find out that 12 is your number, this workout's going to be, you're going to do way more box step ups than you thought.
Yeah.
Cause you get the clock starts over every single time. So I would say, there's no strategy there because I don't give you the option to go lower, like start 6 less, but knowing whether or not you are actually a competitor, established, or recruit, I think would be really helpful information walking into that, where you don't say like, let's try at the competitor level. Sounds fun. Because you're going to end up starting over a bunch of times. And that's the hardest part of the workout, is if you're going to have to start over. And that's where the mind thing, it's just going to like screw with your brain. If you're starting over for like a third or fourth time and you know you have that 20-minute round left, and this is your third one, and you have 2 more 20-minute rounds, you will probably end up quitting, which is the point I would like to get people to and still finish.
This is a kick the box over and say, I'm done with you.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of strategic stuff. I mean, maybe we could talk about warm up or whatever, but anybody else have any tips, strategies, anything they want to throw.
I think one of the things that I think there was a caveat that we made when we first made it was that you had to switch legs at the bottom, so both feet have to touch the floor, which makes it a little bit more time consuming.
Yeah, instead of like leaving a foot on top of the box and only like stepping up.
Yeah, so like
a
instead of
split,
stepping up with your right,
split squat,
going up, switching legs to your left, and then stepping down, but keeping that left leg up and then just seesawing back and forth.
Yeah. I will say, anyone doing a Spartan race, i.e., coming up in November for us at least, and a couple Garage Gym athletes who are joining us, this would be great training for it. And the reason I say that is because especially for me, and I've talked to a lot of athletes who are the same, if you don't pick your legs up regularly, and I'm not talking about running, and I'm talking about above 12 inches, 8 to 12 inches, which is a lot of these Spartan races, especially where we're doing it in North Carolina, your hip flexors are going to be shot. Like absolutely shot. I remember the first time I did a beast, my right hip flexor like stopped working. I was like limping around the last like 4 miles of the event. It wasn't so bad when we were in Asheville, but if you're going to get hip flexor fatigue, like this is a great training for it. I also have a buddy who climbs mountains, like as his hobby, whatever you want to call that. That's what he does for fun.
Crazy.
Yeah, and he does workouts like this, maybe not so crazy, but he does them all the time. He does a ton of box step ups as his training because of that whole hip flexor thing. So another tip. Maybe throw this in there if you're doing a Spartan race soon.
You're making me second guess the Spartan race.
No, it'll be fun. It's gonna be a good time.
Oh, I should see how many steps we did for the hike we did in Alaska.
500,000.
It was a lot. It's pretty much.
It's cracking me up with your step count.
Yeah, who counts steps anymore?
Garmin, that's who. It's just like hey, curious. That's cool.
I mean, maybe Garmin will have a better update than Apple Watch did. You know what I mean?
Probably.
From the way it sounds, it wouldn't take much. So
yeah, I think I'm going back analog again. I keep having a revolt. I think I'm just going to be finally done with fitness wearables. After that entire podcast we did, I'm just going to be like, you know what? I'm good with just like seeing the time, and that's all it does.
Yeah, just count your own heart rate.
Yeah.
Check pulse. Okay, that's about good.
Because you're supposed to do it for 10 seconds and then multiply it by 6. So it gets you real good at like math, Okay, so that's it. That's the end of the podcast, except for we always have to ask. Now I'm gonna ask all of you. There you go. So get ready. Joe go first because he knew it was coming. Then Ashley, then Kyle. So why should someone sign up for Garage Gym Athlete right now?
Because we hit you with the truth bombs.
I think you said that before.
I don't know. Can't you never said you can't reuse them.
We're really good salespeople too. If you can't tell, it's like because I don't know. I just joined.
Patches. Duh.
There you go.
Patches.
There you go. You want some free patches? You want some training? How about Ashley? You got to do better than Joe did. That's not even a passing grade.
Because let's take it back to our goals. If you got any goals that you want to crush, come and hang out with us and we'll help you. We'll keep you accountable. We've got some fun people on Facebook that'll help as well.
I do like our Facebook group. Makes me happy. Do you guys think that helps you in all reality? Let's say, going back to this whole goal and why thing, do you think being a part of, say, that Facebook group, being a part of the Into 3 Fitness team as a whole, do you think that those things, like you guys are part of a programming company, like that's what we do? You know what I mean? Like, do you think that helps in your consistency and overall stick-to-itness, honest assessment, or do you think it wouldn't be any different?
No, absolutely. And I think our athletes say that as well. The ones that I talk to, the ones that I coach, like that. And I always make sure that they're part of the Facebook group. But once they join up on the Facebook group, they always have they always see a difference in their accountability and their willingness to stick with the program. That's a big thing that they really enjoy, is that community that we're able to build on those groups. So, and it helps me as well. Yeah. I
know it helps me. Maybe that's a good reason. Join because of that one. That was good.
Oh, that's no cop-out.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for this week. We have some really interesting studies coming up and some new interviews with different athletes. A lot of cool stuff. News cycle is right around the corner. If you are at all interested, now is the time. Like, don't worry about, when exactly should I join? Join right now, because you're going to jump into Fit Week, all this other stuff. It's going to take you at least a week to learn all of our all of our jargon and terms and everything. So just get in, drink from the fire hose, join the community, and you'll be better for it. That's all I got.
Go harder to kill.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.